3, 2, 1, action. Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your favorite girl here, Ella. Yay! Your favorite lawyer in the making. I am currently a GPLM candidate at the University of Toronto on my legal journey. Is that my alarm? I'm currently on my legal journey to become a licensed lawyer out here in Canada, and I am sharing my experience with you all on this channel. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for riding with me through this journey. I really appreciate you for sticking along with me. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Over here, we discuss all things law, and I share my experiences with you in real time. If you haven't subscribed, please be sure to subscribe, like, share this video, leave me a comment if you have any questions or you just want to leave a comment on how beautiful I'm looking today. Turn on your notification bell so you get notified whenever I post my video. In today's video, as always, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just sharing the experiences of myself, and sometimes when I speak to my peers, I come back and let you all know what people are saying and what they're thinking about their experiences. That's what today's video is going to be about. I'm going to be talking about the barriers that internationally trained lawyers face in Canada. Mind you, there are two categories of internationally trained professionals when it comes to law in Canada, and I don't think that people differentiate that a lot. There are internationally trained lawyers, so people who are already lawyers from their home countries or from different jurisdictions, and then there are internationally trained law students, so people who just got their law degrees from different countries but have never actually practiced law, or they have never been licensed to practice law in another country. Today's video is going to address the barriers that you might face whilst you're in Canada trying to go through the licensing process to become a lawyer in a province here in Canada. It applies to both ITLs, internationally trained lawyers, and internationally trained law students as well. I've broken down this video with a couple of overarching points, and I'm going to go through them step by step. This is something that you should have in hindsight, just in case you're thinking of coming to Canada and your primary area of practice is law, your career path is law. This is a helpful video for you to know of what is currently going on. Things might change when it's your turn, but this is something that people are facing. The first barrier that is out there is policy changes. For example, immigration. I'm not licensed to give any immigration advice again, but if you're coming to Canada as an internationally trained lawyer, and let's say you're coming to do a GPLM program at UofT, you're coming on a student visa, hoping to, transition into like a work permit and getting your permanent residency through that route. Immigration concerns are things that internationally trained lawyers have to worry about. When you finish with your school program, then you have to worry about turning that into an open-ended work permit and looking for how to have your stay sorted out in Canada. That is something that worries some students, some internationally trained lawyers currently, especially with the whole immigration changes that are going on in Canada and everything becoming tighter. These are some concerns and real lifetime issues that people are having to deal with, whether it be the waiting process or not knowing what the government is going to do next. So some policy changes when it comes to immigration are things that actually bother a lot of internationally trained lawyers. Another thing to worry about in terms of policy is the NCA, which is the National Committee on Accreditation, the body where you have to go through in order for you to get a certificate of qualification to be able to register for a licensing process through any of the provinces in the common law area of Canada. NCA can switch their requirements up at any time. So for example, this year, as of March, I believe March 1st, there's new policy going in. So if you've not received your NCA assessment by March 1st of this year, you most likely will be required to have, in addition to the NCA exams that you're primarily required to have, you'll be required to do an English language proficiency test, and also I think study something about indigenous law. There's an indigenous law competency as well. So if you're thinking about the process of wanting to become licensed here in Canada, policy changes is something that can be a barrier or can just delay your time period, because you can be on the journey, like my peers are on the journey, but things can just switch up on you whilst you're going through that journey. So this is something that you should potentially be aware of. Another thing in terms of policy is being told that your civil law degree does not count. So there are a lot of peers of mine who are civilly trained criminal, family, immigration lawyers from wherever they're coming from a civil jurisdiction, and they go through the NCA process, but they can't get an NCA assessment because their law degree is not recognized because they're coming from a civil law jurisdiction. So they have to go through an NCA the NCA process, they have to go through a whole law degree, hence why many of them take the GPLLM LLM program to fulfill that law school requirement and that in-person requirement that you're required to have as well. In addition to being told that your law degree doesn't count, which obviously can be insulting to an already established lawyer, there are some lawyers who go through virtual law school, so they don't have in-person experience. And when you're going through the NCA, part of what the NCA requires is for you to have, I believe, a minimum of 2 years in-person law school experience. So if you're somebody who maybe you're Canadian and you did your law school virtually, for example, in England, as a lot of people do, that might not meet the NCA's in-person requirement, and so you might be required to take an actual law program. So, for example, the GPLM program, 2-year degree to fulfill that in-person requirement that the NCA needs. So, in terms of policy changes, these are some things that act as barriers for internationally trained lawyers. Moving on, there are procedural barriers. I like to call them procedural barriers that might delay your process of gaining employment. So there's problems finding who's going to give you a chance. Yes, you have all these experiences, but there's this whole thing of you don't have Canadian experiences. Now, I think the government has done something, I can't remember if it's a provincial or federal government, that it's supposed to, at least on paper, ensure that employers are not specifically looking for candidates who have Canadian experience. Because, hey, a lot of people are migrating to this country because they have skills. So why would you be requiring Canadian experience from people who came to this country to help out and use their skills? So yeah, on paper, Canadian experience is no longer required. I don't know if some employers just have that on paper and then they do something else, but a barrier that internationally trained lawyers face is having to convince employers that they have the skills, even if they're coming from a different country. They have the skills here and they can apply those skills. The skills can translate to whatever employers are looking for here in Canada. So finding employment is one really, I'm going to tell you, is a really tough thing, especially if you don't know how to network, or if you don't know anyone on the other side. It can be a very big challenge, because you will get stuck. Anyways, it can be a very big challenge. In terms of procedures as well, writing your resume, your CV in Canada, how it's written, there are some unspoken rules. For example, you shouldn't have more than a 2-page resume. Your pictures should not be on your resume. There's a style of how your resume should look. In terms of writing your cover letter, you're supposed to know how to tell a story about yourself and how you're going to be a good fit for the firm or for the company that you want to work with. If you're an internationally trained lawyer and this is foreign to you, it's not how it's done in your country, then that might definitely serve as a barrier, especially when you don't have a helping hand to show you, oh, this is how it's done in the Canadian way, or this is how it's done in Toronto. If there's no one guiding you through that path, or you don't have a program like this where you're open to career counseling and advice, then that might become a problem and a breach, that's a gap that you have to look for ways to bridge it. The next thing that comes off the top of my head are my lists, because obviously I'm looking through my laptop, this is based on research, is finances. Obviously, coming to a new country or coming back from an international law degree back into Canada costs a lot of money. You've already been milked off for tuition and everything, and life is expensive, the country is expensive, Canada, Toronto, everywhere is expensive, and finances is another thing. And if you're going through the licensing process, you have to pay. It's expensive to pay for the NCA, it's expensive to pay for the NCA application, for the NCA exams. If you're going to do a master's, that's expensive. You're going to have to buy books, materials, everything costs money. So that's a lot of burden that a lot of international students, a lot of internationally trained lawyers or foreign trained law students have to go through. Some people go through a lot of debt to be able to fund this dream that we're all pushing. So that's something that in hindsight that you should be aware of. A lot of people don't really talk about finances, but I know and I find that it's a huge topic that people don't really speak about or address. So you have to do what you have to do in the meantime whilst you're waiting for your goal to become a lawyer. You have to look for other ways to sort out your finances. Some lawyers end up still working in their home countries whilst pursuing their licensing journey here. Some people choose to do the NCAs whilst they're still in their home countries because it's a virtual exam and you can take it from anywhere in the world. As of today, you can check their websites in case they update something in the future. But yeah, some people choose to do that whilst they're still in their home country, satisfy those requirements before coming here and going through the licensing and experiential training. You have to find a way around addressing those financial concerns and looking for how to kind of work with the situation, because you can't really get an escape from it. As years go by, it always becomes more expensive, unfortunately. The next barrier that I am very, very aware of that internationally trained lawyers or law students go through in Canada is family. Especially if you're migrating here with your family. There's some young lawyers who migrate with your family. They are the providers, or they and their partners, husband and wife, they are the providers. They have little kids. How do you navigate this process of still wanting to fulfill that dream while still caring for your family that you have to take care of? The whole thing of being in a new country, especially when you don't have support, leaving family at home, there are real life experiences and challenges that for a good portion of years you would have to face them and look for how to navigate it. You would need those supports, and there are sometimes where your family might not even know what you're going through, or you get tired of explaining yourself and you have to juggle up things for yourself, or even your family in your home country might not really understand the gravity of what you're dealing with. Those are some things that unfortunately internationally trained lawyers have to deal with. Aside from the fact that they're trying to get licensed here, there is also the huge chunk of family at home, worrying about time difference, reaching out. Keeping those connections alive over the years can be really, really tasking, and it's something that you should think about if you're thinking of embarking on the unique journey of wanting to become a lawyer here in Canada through the path of being an internationally trained lawyer or internationally trained law student. The next barrier that is out there is obviously cultural barriers. Adjusting to a new legal system, civil law is different from common law. Understanding the legal skills and types of researches that we do, case law, the importance of precedent, and all of that has to do with common law can be very, very different from people who are coming from a civil law codified based system. So those are some cultural barriers that you should be aware of. You hear things of networking, talking to people. There are people who come from different countries where I've spoken to a couple of my colleagues from China, and they said, while we're doing networking, they can't just send an email to a partner in a firm in China of saying, I want to have a coffee chat with you, talk about my experience, But in Toronto, you're hearing all these things that people want to chat about their experience and connect with law students or new lawyers. So you're setting cultural barriers that you would have to leave your comfort zone, come out of your shell, and so you just have to do it. You have to do it if it's something that you really, really want. You have to learn the culture of the new place where you find yourself in, and not hold on to what you already knew, but take on the new information, use what you have, and use that to get what you want. The more you get used to the system, the better it becomes for you, and the more you're able to navigate your path as a fish in the ocean. Being shy, not being bold enough to speak, not coming out of your comfort zone. There's so many people that come from countries where it's not like this in Canada. You don't have to put yourself out there. You don't have to make a LinkedIn post. It's a totally different system, and the earlier you get used to these things, the better it will be for you. Cultural and networking barriers and cultural shocks are something that internationally trained lawyers and internationally trained law students have to deal with if you're thinking of coming here to become licensed in Canada. Another barrier is obviously the weather, having to navigate winter. This year, I would say, although I was in the UK for the last 2 years, but we've had a lot of snowstorms in Toronto and a lot of cold weathers. I think for the worst snowstorm that we had by the end of January or so, the last Sunday of January, we had class that day and I had to come to school. I mean, you could have skipped class if you want, but I dogged it out and I came to school. And having to go through that weather for this degree to come to school in a snowstorm, it's no joke. Today is Sunday, January 25th. There's a snowstorm, but we're still coming to class because they're making us come to school because of the NCAs. If you ever wonder why your lawyers charge so high, it's because of the struggle and stress they went through and how much it cost them to get that degree. Pay a lawyer today. heading home. We're let out of class earlier today. Trying to get back home in this snowstorm. Oh my god. It's like my favorites are the first ones here, actually. Can't even. Why is it that every time we come to this school, there's a snow situation? Oh my god. It's just the wind. Yeah, it's the wind. That's a successful day being on campus at night. But the snow is so pretty. It's so shiny. These are your future lawyers. This is what we go through to get that degree for the NCA. So I can't imagine somebody just coming from a warm country last summer and they're in this program and they have to deal with all of this. That's something that you should be aware of. And I'm hoping that if you're on this side, on the other side of this video, watching me, that you have a good support system. You find a good support system of like minds of people. They don't have to be people from your country, just of people going through the same experience with you. Because if you have people going through the same experience together, it kind of makes things easier, which is another reason why I like the GPLM program. A lot of my peers, although we have unique experiences, we're also having shared similar experience on the way going through this together. The next thing on my list is the mental and emotional stress. Mental health is key. Trying to be able to balance and regulate your emotions and not be too overwhelmed or stressed out. Knowing how to balance the things that you have to do, it's very, 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 very important. There's some of us that don't get enough sleep. There's some people who are working nights because that's the daytime in their home country and they're managing the jobs that they still hold there to be able to fund themselves here in Canada. That's a lot of stress, and still having to come to school, still having to network, still having to pass your courses, still having to think of how to get articling positions, how to get employed here in Canada. It's a lot of mental, mind stress, emotional stress that you're going to definitely embark upon during this period. Unless if you know somebody and things are already sorted out for you, or you're swimming in a lot of cash, then I mean, you can forget about some of the things I'm saying. But if you're prepared to go through this experience, this is something that you should be aware of. That is the potential barrier. Another thing is your mind playing games with you. So for example, you're already established from your home country, you're going through the NCA process. They've told you that your degree doesn't count, even though you're a lawyer, even though you teach in law schools here in Canada, because you're some colleagues of mine who are professors at law schools in Canada, but they can't be lawyers until they go through the NCA process because they're from civil law trained countries. So you have to be able to have a healthy mind, know that this is a journey, know that having to start over again is not a bad thing. It's just something that you have to do. It's a thing of not letting your mind win over you. You always have to overpower your mind. If you're thinking about something negative, think about the positive aspect of it. And yeah, why not? Why not? You chose this life, so you might as well dug it out. And if you're having some mental struggles, or your mind is playing games with you, try to talk to somebody or look for a way to seek help. Especially if you're in a GPLM program like me, we get access to mental health counseling and services that you can always, I believe there's a 247 number that you can call if you're having all these issues, and they can be of help to you. They provide those services as well. So you have to be aware of the mental and emotional stress that it takes to go through this entire process. And I'm talking about a minimum of 2 to 3 years. Some people, even it takes longer. You know, the NCA's cap is 5 years for you to get your NCA qualifications. There's a reason why it's 5 years. It could take some people 5 years to get that done. So these are some things that you should be aware of. There will be lonely seasons. Loneliness will come, especially if you're new to Canada. You're navigating a whole country. So just try to be kind to yourself. If you get a job eventually, learn how to have work-life balance. You know when to rest. Know when to prioritize what you're prioritizing at a particular time, and always know that in whatever you're doing, you're on the right track, and at the end of the day, it will all pay off. What else do I have on my list? I think the good news I have is that everyone eventually finds their way, no matter how long it takes. And you have to learn how to advocate for yourself. I've been attending a lot of networking events, and the key thing I keep hearing all the time is learn how to advocate for yourself. Because if you're not telling people who you are and what you can do and what you can bring to the table, they can't assume. It's what you say and what you've written that you're able to work with and give you that first opportunity. There will be a lot of no's, but hey, someone once told me, a very, very important person once told me that no is just a redirection in your life. So no matter how many no's you get, is redirecting you to the yes that is going to be that key opportunity that you need to kickstart off your career. And this advice is also to myself. And yeah, that's all I have for this video. In our next video, I'll be talking about how to bridge this gap and how to address some parts of these barriers. I hope that you have found today's video very helpful and engaging. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comment section. I'm always happy to respond to your questions. Remember to like this video, share this video. If you haven't done so, subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you get notified whenever I post my video. And it would be lovely if we can get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. We've been doing this for almost 3 years, so subscribe, like, and share. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you all in our next video, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.